All right, let's get into it today. So, I was getting some fast food yesterday and I went to our local Slim Chickens. And which, by the way, let me actually pull up some data. I'm just curious about this. So, went to Slim Chickens. I knew that one of the locations down the street that they had an AI menu. Hadn't actually seen it yet. Went to the one by my house, and sure enough, there was an AI menu where you give the order, you say what you want, and then it says, will that be all, what have you. And here's what I'll say right off the bat. I had no issues with it. It wasn't hard to use. The person sounded relatively normal. I didn't feel like I was talking to an AI in the sense of the things that you glean from listening. You can kind of catch a little bit of those intricacies as you check out things like that. And got my food. Food was correct. Everything was right. I should be happy, right? And if you're a first time listener to the show, let me just say this. And this is like the disclaimer I always give. And let me just talk for a second about biases and how people approach information. I absolutely have a bias towards sincere content, genuine efforts. If you've listened to the podcast long term, I've talked about being annoyed by getting a phone call from your insurance person who they call you one time a year. You're never going to hear from them, but they call you when it's time to re-up, or your cable company that suddenly offers a deal when you're threatening to leave. All these things that just wreak really the worst parts of scale without really thinking about how do you create a meaningful, valuable customer experience for your customer. So I talk about this a lot. This is definitely my bias. And so here I am talking about an experience with AI that was relatively positive, and yet I'm about to talk about why I don't think it's a wise move for businesses in the future. Now, from a pure numbers standpoint, from a pure, how does the math make sense? You have one less person that you're having to pay to run the drive-through, and it is essentially automated. It's not unlike whenever you call you call your pest control company, or you call some service business, and it gives you the options of press 1 for this, press 2 for that. And a lot of times nowadays, this is before the AI days, but I remember calling my bank to try to get a new a new debit card. And the number of buttons I had to press, I never actually got someone on the phone. Finally, by the 4th or 5th option, it was would you like us to send a new one? And I was like, 1, yes, which they did. Now, I will say in that whole experience, I found myself pretty annoyed. I was annoyed about how long it was taking. I was annoyed by the number of menus I was having to go through. And I was like, dude, this would be so much easier if I could just talk to someone. But again, in the conversation of scale, as an organization running nationwide or worldwide, I understand why businesses are attracted to the pure dollars and cents that are saved through AI and automation. And let me just say, I'm not anti-automation. I think if you're running a business and you're doing it all yourself, and you are, you're working all these hours, you're thinking, man, this is so painful. There's probably an angle of automation there for you that can make your life significantly easier. For me, whenever I sell my PodStart program and people get automated emails, it says, beep boop, this is an automated email from Blake. So people know it's automated, but it's just because I can't do that for every single person. Now, what people do get, however, is a very short video from me whenever they buy from me, where I say, hey, this is Blake. Thank you, Tom, for buying this from me. And whether that's PodStart or maybe it's a consulting package or what have you, it's, whatever business they're representing, it's, hey, Tom, thanks for buying from me. I'm really excited to start working with you and Tom, Tom's Incorporated. Thanks for your trust in me. Here's what our work's going to look like going forward. Here's a quick 1, 2, 3s. Here's the best way to contact me. And that video is probably about 60 seconds. It's not long, but I do make sure that every customer gets that personal touch from me. So I'm not anti-AI. I'm not anti-automation. I like ChatGPT for the many angles of creativity it can provide. However, I think this is an interesting observation when we think about how one fast food restaurant does it compared to another one. So thinking about this, I started talking on this podcast and my throat started to get thirsty, man. Excuse me. Thinking about two different fast food restaurants. You have Slim Chickens on one hand, and then you have Chick Fil-A on the other hand. Two large fast food places. I looked it up. Slim Chickens has over 100 locations around the world. Those are predominantly in, I think it says here, 19 states. Oh, actually, updated. I'm actually looking at the updated information. They have 280 locations. Actually, let's double check this math here. 280 locations worldwide with the plans to expand to 1,200 locations. Wow. Compared to the Chick Fil-A, how many do we got from Chick Fil-A? Chick Fil-A has 3,000 restaurants. So a much larger scale, though both are certainly operating at a large scale. But you have two different experiences. You drive into Slim Chickens, you go to the drive-thru, you get an AI menu, you say what you want. Hopefully it's correct, which in my case, again, it was. I didn't have a bad experience. And compare this to Chick Fil-A. You drive up, someone comes to your door, actually comes to your window. They talk to you. Hey, hello, how you doing? You pay right there. They direct you, which is always kind of funny because there's only one way to go, right? There's no like, there's no maze in front of you. There's only one way forward, and yet we always get, oh yeah, and you're actually gonna go right over here. You're just gonna drive up there. But you have somebody who's directing you and trying to give you a great customer experience. Two companies at scale, yet two companies that have very different approaches. I was talking to another company that is a lot like Chick-fil-A, 7 Brew. 7 Brew has, good Lord, this has taken the country by storm. I feel like I'm seeing 7 Brews everywhere. And in fact, let's actually take a look at that. Let's see if we can find that information. 7 Brew locations. Let's see how many we got here. It might be too small to get the total number. Okay, this is from a year ago. They were over 100 stores. And I know it's much larger than that because I was having coffee with the guy who actually goes and launches the new locations. Okay, here we go. Over 300 locations across the US. That's incredible. So I was having coffee with the guy who launches the 7 Brews, and we were just making small talk. And I was talking about how one thing that was kind of funny to me was how the 7 Brew people are so friendly. And here's a good example. My wife and I, we had just gone to therapy, and we had finished therapy, and right near the private practices, like where this place was, there was a coffee shop. And so one part of like our ritual of whenever we would finish therapy, which everything's great, by the way, we're all great. But one of our rituals was we'd go to therapy and then we'd go get like a tasty coffee or like, you know, a little snack after our meeting. Well, 7 Brew's right there. So we pull up to 7 Brew. This guy walks out and he says, hey, how's it going, guys? And we're like, everything's going good. Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for asking. And he's like, what are you guys up to today? And I was like, hey, you know, we're just heading home to see our kids. And he's like, what do you guys just been out and about? And And I was like, yeah, we're just spending some time together. And we had given our order and everything. This guy was just making small talk. And he goes, he goes, oh yeah, you're just hanging out. And I go, yeah, just hanging out. And he goes, well, what have you been doing? You guys just been like, like, and there's like a line where you go from, uh, polite and kind to like, wow, this guy is very much invested. And, so he asked a question like that. And then finally I just kind of smiled and well, we just finished marriage counseling actually. And we could have said we were getting divorced and our marriage was over and our kids would be raised by wolves. Because I said that, his countenance dropped. He was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And this is like a young 20-something-year-old. So, I mean, probably hasn't lived a lot of life. I don't know how much counseling this person's had, but for whatever reason, this person thought that, we were letting him know the three of us are going to get together and talk about our marriage. But he had this look about him, and I said, hey, it's cool, man. Like we're great. And he goes, oh, okay. Well, hey, sorry, I didn't, and I said, hey, don't worry about it. It's all good, man. But I used that story, and I've told my buddy who works at Seven Brew to talk about, yeah, man, you guys do. Yeah. I mean, talk about a friendly group. And that's an extreme case. And by the way, don't take that like the wrong way. In hindsight, I don't think negatively on that guy. I mean, this is a guy who just is genuinely trying to have, like, I think this is what I like about that story. This is someone genuinely trying to have a connection with someone coming through their drive-thru. Now, if you're an introvert, this might be your worst nightmare. Maybe you're like, give me the drive-thru AI every time, please. Don't talk to me. I don't want to see you. I want to show up in my pajamas and get my stuff, go home. Nobody talk to me, please. But I admire the desire for connection that this Seven Brew employee had. Again, this is two totally different ways to do business. The AI hands-off approach and the human touch, connection-oriented, maybe a little too human touch-oriented, but this very personable approach. And I want to ask you, I mean, I guess I could ask, which one do you prefer? And I think we'd probably have maybe a variety of answers. But I think the question to consider today is, which one's actually better for business? Which one is an answer for business? Or which one leads to more compelling, meaningful growth? Now, here's what I'll say from a numbers standpoint. I think that many times we think that these things that are competitive edges to our business, that personality to our business, I think a lot of times we think that in order to grow our business in that way, that we have to say goodbye to these personal touches because they're not scalable. And I've heard this a lot, actually. I've been told this myself. I've talked about the videos I send people. I send handwritten notes to people. I've even shared some of these examples with other people in the business space. And I had a guy say this to me one time, which I've heard this a million times, not specifically to me, but just in general. Oh, that's not scalable. Oh, that isn't scalable. Great idea, but that's not scalable. And I almost feel like we are a bit too beholden to this concept of scale, where we lose sight on the nuance of running a business and growing a business. Is it possible to run a business at scale and yet not lose your soul in the process? To not lose the things that make you what you are and the value behind it and the specialness behind it? Is it possible to operate at scale and still have those characteristics? I think Chick Fil-A and Seven Brew show us that you can. So for me, moving on, is it possible to which one's better? I'm going to lean into my bias for a second. I've talked about this essay a million times on the show. It's 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly. Is it Kevin Kelly? Let's double check that real quick. I think it's Kevin Kelly. Yeah, Kevin Kelly. I had a football coach in high school named Kevin Kelly. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, am I thinking about my football coach or is this the right guy? Yeah, Kevin Kelly, 1000 True Fans. You should check out this article. Just Google it. You'll find it. And the whole premise of this, and I won't get too in the weeds because I've mentioned this story so many times, so I don't want to bore anyone to death about it. But the basic concept is for a multi-million-dollar business, you don't need millions of customers. You need 1,000 true fans. And the exponential ROI on those people is that not only will they buy again and again and again and again because they so deeply love your product, but they will tell everyone about how much they love your brand, how great it is, all the things it's doing for them. Like, you want to get an ROI on ad spend, you want to get ROI on the social media marketing you're doing, nothing is going to compare to the power of someone's recommendation, the power of a friend, literally the word of someone you know saying, that was great, buy it. It's just how we operate. In fact, we know it's so compelling because now there's this new this bill or whatever this is that got put out on finding companies that make up reviews. In case you didn't see this, this came through, and I'm butchering this because I'm pulling it from like the total back of my mind, but this came up last week or the week before where the government will fine you if you make up reviews, which a lot of people do. A lot of people do it, and they put up pictures of fake people on their website to be like, here's what John said about me. And John's made up. It's not a real person. And it's the person who made the website who just wrote like, best company ever. I love it. You know? So we know how valuable it is, but few of us are willing to invest in our customers to create those 1,000 true fans. Most of us, many of us, are looking for what's the next sale? What's the next point of sale? The next time that I can convince someone to buy from me. And once that person buys, they go into the bucket of already bought to never be thought of again until 1 year later when it's renewal time. And they go on and look to convert whoever hasn't bought previously. The other way to think of it is someone buys from you. They don't go into that bucket that goes into the void. They go into a bucket called VIP. Now, naturally, not all your customers are going to be great. You know, you'll start working with someone, you'll realize, wow, this wasn't a great contract for me. But in that VIP bucket are customers that you are constantly curating their experience. You're constantly curating your engagement with them. You're thinking about them. You're connecting with them. You're sending them things that show them their value with you. So for me, it's voice memos, handwritten notes, gifts. I mean, I've signed 2 new customers this last 2 weeks, and I'm already thinking of like, what am I going to be buying them as a sign of, hey, thanks for your investment. And when I say buy, I don't mean generic swag. Hey, here's my branded shirt. I mean, stuff that they would actually care about, things that they actually like. Had a customer who was a big camper. He loved to go out with his camper. And so I bought him, and I knew he loved coffee. So I got him a Yeti mug. I had it branded with his business name on it. And I got him a book, just some stuff that he could be out, like sitting out in the morning in front of his camper, enjoying some coffee. I got him some coffee too. And I wrote him a note and said, you know, hey, enjoy the coffee. And he wrote back, man, I love this. I'm definitely I'm going down on the camper this week. Obviously, I don't know how to talk about this because I don't camp, but he was like, I'm spending time with the camper this weekend. I'm excited to take it with me. And I mean, he said it a lot more excited than him begrudgingly. Yeah, I'm going to take it, I guess. But the point is like, you know, this is how I'm curating an experience for my customers rather than just, great, you bought, let me move on to the next person. Here's what this does for you. The ROI is almost impossible to measure. I was going back to my buddy I was talking to who opens the new 7 Brew locations. He was talking to me about roadies, people who show up to each new location, people who create shirts for each new location. I mean, these are people who this might be a cult. These are people who really love their 7 Brew. How do you put a dollar amount on that? Now, the smart and savvy business people, they understand it. They understand the dollar value of it. And it doesn't demean or devalue the integrity of the whole thing, but they understand this is how you grow a long-term, meaningful business. So I think the takeaway today, it's less about automation, scale. Should you do it? Should you not? You should automate. You should think about these ways to make your life easier as you scale. But you should be careful not to lose the soul of what makes your business, the characteristics and the qualities that people can engage with. And ask yourself this, while we scale, how do we keep creating sincere, intentional moments with our customers? And to put more of a business lingo on it, how are we crafting that customer experience? That's all Chick Fil-A is. It's customer experience. What do I want someone to think when they pull up? What do I want the experience to be like? Do I want them leaning out of their window, yelling at the machine, trying to get it right? Or do I want them to see a face, look at someone's eyes, someone to greet them with a smile and say, hey, my pleasure. I'm happy to do that for you. These are people who are thinking bigger picture than just automation. And it's something for us to think about too. Hey, that's today's episode of the Good Advice Podcast. If you're a first-time listener, what the heck are you waiting on? Click that subscribe or follow button so you can keep getting good advice wherever you are. Don't forget, you can always support the podcast for as little as the price of a cup of coffee on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Or if you're a business, you want to advertise on the podcast, you can always reach out, blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. Thank you for our long-term supporters and listeners. That's today's good advice. We'll see you later. Take care.